I started out with a very typical beginner guitar, which was a Squire Bullet, it was called at the time. And I didn't know anything about guitar. I didn't know, and we're talking, I was 13, 14 years old. I didn't know, tone wood or pickup. I didn't know anything. That's the guitar. It was cheap. My parents thought, okay, if we get this for him, quits, it's okay. It's not like we're giving him a $10,000 guitar. That's fine. You keep it in the closet if he wants. I became very, obsessed isn't even the word. It took over my life, the whole, forever. And then a few years later, I was lucky enough to get another guitar. It was a Fender Mexican Stratocaster in ice blue metallic, I believe, with a rosewood neck. And for several more years, that was my guitar for a very long time. And then I started to experiment a little bit more with a guitar that had active pickups in it, a whammy bar, a locking tuning, everything. More super strat, more aggressive. But I didn't ultimately like that guitar because I felt like some of my identity that I developed for several years had kind of been stripped away. It was a confusing period for me, trying to find my sound. And I think a lot of people will probably have that same issue when they're trying to find who they are, trying to find a voice as a musician. So I took everything I had and I sold everything. In my early 20s, I was maybe 19, 20, and I bought a Telecaster. So that was in every way completely stripped down to the basics that a guitar is. And it completely changed the way I played. I started to use my middle finger more when I played the hybrid. I started to, rethink vibrato because I didn't have a whammy bar anymore. I started to rethink tuning because now it's not locked in two places. The neck shape was different, everything changed, tone, you name it. And I started to go down a path of a more kind of classic, tube amp, very specific tube drive kind of sound, no pedals, guitar into the amp. And then I started teaching, I guess you could say professionally. I was teaching out of a store, and I saved everything I had and I bought my first custom shop instrument, which was such a moment for me. It was such a beautiful instrument, a handmade, beautiful guitar. I played that guitar relentlessly. It became, my new sound. I had a little bar, a whammy bar in it, still plugged straight into an amp, and that's the sound you hear on the first 3 albums that I released. It's a very, very important time for me because I started to develop a sound. Shortly after that, I put out Atomic Mind and I started to make some friends in the music industry. And I got asked to go down to the NAMM show and perform at the Seymour Duncan booth. And at the time, Seymour Duncan had a lot of really great modern guitar artists. Everyone from Jeff Loomis, Mark Holcomb, Keith Merrow, myself, Aaron Marshall, Ola, everybody was playing. Even Yngwie was with Seymour Duncan at this point. And through that, I was able to have some really great discussions with people. Keith Merrow, another Schecter artist, he was interested in seeing if I wanted to try Schecter guitars. Not that he had any stake in the company, but he helped me out. So I had a guitar sent to my house that was similar to the guitar I was playing. I played it, and it was I still have the guitar. It's a black Schecter custom shop traditional model, and it was by far the greatest guitar I'd ever played. It was unexpected because I knew Schecter as a very new metal, the genre at the time was called, which is a very silly name for it. I think it was an N-U with an umlaut, I believe, above it. Anyway, I didn't think Schecter was for me because it was a different style of music. But then I started playing the guitar, and at the time Schecter was relaunching their custom shop. They wanted somebody to sort of help brand and push the brand. And I was starting to get some notoriety and people were talking about me a little bit, especially because I was one of the only guys in the modern scene who was playing a guitar with single coils and was plugging directly into an amp. Schecter took an interest in that, and I was lucky enough to get to do my first clinic tour in China, Taiwan, Hong Kong, a few other places. And this was new because I hadn't really traveled. I did one tour years and years earlier, and that was a different project. But I come from a climate of very extreme, very odd extremes. I'm from Canada, so it gets really, really cold and damp, like damp, wet, cold, and then really hot and humid. An incorrectly treated instrument will have a nightmare in this climate. You know, the frets will stick out, the neck will bow or concave, the electronics will get all wet and dirty and gross. But this guitar didn't have any of those problems, and that was number one thing for me. Plus, I met somebody at the company who kind of changed my life, who I still travel with today. And he became one of my closest friends, and he helped me get in the mix at Schecter, and they all decided I was going to be the first person to get a custom shop signature model and help really push the brand. You know, for a few years it was just single coil, and we put out a silver version, which was kind of a tribute to the guitar I was playing at the time with a different company, and I got that. And then we did a master-built guitar that had a Wenge neck and an ebony fingerboard, and that was an accident. I just went into the custom shop and I saw a neck on the wall, and I was like, wow, that's really cool. I want to use that. Can I use that? And they said, yeah. We don't have a body though, what should we do? So I was in the shop and I found an old body from the 90s. And it still had Schecter's old design where the input jack was on the top of the body. It loaded on the top as opposed to where I have it on the bottom now. And it was a mint green, sort of seafoam green body with the Wenge and ebony fingerboard, and it looked so beautiful together. And I remember posting a picture of it, and it went crazy. People, wow. So we decided, let's make that model. Let's do a production of that. So that's when it really became my model. You know, started off with the atomic green, and it was very successful. So I was lucky to get it to do another couple. So then we did atomic snow and atomic frost, which started to have a look. These guitars looked like they were part of the same family. Old car colors, ice cream, almost. And then coral, then we did a little bit more of an extreme one, did the tangerine. It just sort of branched out from there. But somewhere in there I decided, let's try and do something with a different sound. You know, I'm a weird person with extremes. All of a sudden, I'll just change something really quickly. Like I used to have a beard, a very big beard, and then I just decided I'm done with it. I used to play single coils, and I decided it's time for something different. All of a sudden, I started singing. I started using a whammy bar again. I bought a hat. I don't know, weird, just things all of a sudden. But I think because my music has changed so much, and the way I make music and the way I think about music has changed, I think the gear in my playing needs to change with it, or else it's just old me stepping into something new. I'd like to be changing with the times. You know, a big contingency in all of this too was doing an import model. I think having the custom shop line with the import line, the Diamond Series line, gave me this sort of perfect storm of where I wanted to go next. You know, having the accessibility to do things with both. Plus the success of the Diamond Series paved the way for me to keep doing things with Schecter and innovating. You know, getting hand-wound pickups, developed the exact pickups I wanted. You know, I used to work with another company, and I kind of stepped away from them, and let's do everything in-house together at Schecter. And you know, now 2022 going into this new year, I see the return of a model that I originally used when I sold everything, which was a Telecaster, PT. You know, I got asked, why are you doing this one? What's the whole point of this? You know, PT, Telecaster and Stratocaster go together. It's just the most perfect team up. You know, wine and cheese, it's the perfect team up, you know? I'm in Italy doing this interview, so I have, you have to, Barolo and Parmesan, it just goes perfectly together. So it's sort of a tribute to the old me but a modern version of it with a humbucker in the neck, a wenge neck, and these cool metallic body colors. Also with the car, ice cream kind of body colors. And it's all about just keeping it traditional but modern, which I believe is also part of my sound. Part of my music, my composition approach is that old school piano, much like how composers used to write. I'm trying to follow in footsteps. You can hear the whole orchestra on a piano, but I do it with a computer, so it's the old with the new. Everything's that perfect blend, I like to think. And I'm starting to develop more and more with that. Moving forward, it's now about finding the perfect sound, refining pickup sounds, refining neck shape, getting the exact color that I want, getting the exact feel of the guitar I want. In this really great place right now, but we're still developing and still moving forward.